There was a lot of interest a few months back when we had a DVD on fox hunting. A lot of members were interested in learning more about it. So tonight we bring you a program on fox hunting by our local experts, John, WB0CMC, and Bill, WA9ASD. Take it away. Okay.
All right. Well, it's been a while since we've done any fox hunting in the area, as far as I know. And we've kind of got a two-part program tonight, HF and VHF. And I think we'll probably start out with HF, and I will give you the Elmer Fudd of HF, Bill. What is he weapon?
That's it, folks. Well, if you were here a couple of months ago for that video, you got a much better introduction to HF fox hunting than I can provide, as I've never done that. And those hunts are typically on 80 meters in CW. They're done on foot, which I will probably never do. Out in open country, sometimes they involve elements of orienteering. Usually they have a fixed starting point and they let one hunter go at a time, or a couple. And the event's scored by elapsed time to find the transmitter. On those frequencies, the typical antenna is a loop stick, just like you would have in a portable radio. As I think you've seen, those loop stick antennas are fairly directional. The receiver itself usually has a tone oscillator built into it that's driven by the signal strength. So when you have the antenna oriented to the null, the tone is lowest, and then as you find the high point of the direction, it gets higher. So, and that was shown in that video. There is, I don't know if there is any currently, but when I first started fox hunting, I actually started hunting on 10 meters. And the club that I belonged to in Illinois had a repeater on 10 meters AM, up in the top of the band on the odd numbered frequencies. The even numbers go to the FM repeaters. And so we used to hunt with AM radios up there. And this, as a matter of fact, is the radio that I used. Now, transmitter hunting obviously relies on signal strength to determine if you're pointing your antenna in the right direction. And so you'll notice that there's no indicator on this, so I adapted another indicator so that I could tell what the signal strength was. This just reads the ABC voltage out of this radio. And the only antenna used was a 9-foot whip mounted on the back of the car in the middle of the bumper. That was back in the days when bumpers had steel in them. And so you could mount an antenna back there, and it connected very well to the ground plane. And the way the hunts were operated is they had a fixed starting time, usually like 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And people could start anywhere they wanted. Most transmitter hunts have a certain geographic area that they're restricted to. The transmitter will be somewhere in this area. And so what people would do is they'd find on Sunday afternoon an empty parking lot, which is getting harder to do nowadays, and drive in a circle while the fox was transmitting. And when they got the strongest S-meter reading, they were pointing in the direction that the transmitter was. And so they would drive off in that direction and wait for the next signal, and if it was stronger, they'd keep going that way. So it was a lot of hit and miss stuff, but it was fun, and they were very entertaining. Most people were running converted CBs as transmitters, so there were only 3 to 4 watts of RF available, so the signals weren't all that strong. I did manage to win a hunt once, and they changed the rules after that hunt, because I used this on my CB, which puts out about 60 watts. And so people were having no trouble hearing me transmit when they started. And as they got closer, they found that they couldn't attenuate the signal enough to figure out what direction I was in. That hunt went for quite a while. So they changed the rules and they limited the power output in that hunt. So that's how that went. But that was a lot of fun. And I still have a 9-foot whip in case anybody wants to go 10-meter hunting. Let me see, what else? Those hunts, the guy hiding was usually in a car because it was a very imprecise direction finding technique. So it was a matter of driving around until the signal got so strong that you could hear the guy talking, you know, listening out the window. Plus they were daytime so you could see his car. That was another thing that people like to do, is borrow somebody else's car, which was perfectly legal. So anyways, that's what I have experienced in 10-meter hunting.
Okay.
I'm going to talk a little about VHF hunting.
Okay, VHF and UHF. 2 meters is probably the most popular one that we've had around here. I put together a robo-rabbit, if you will, and it's got an idea in there with 5 positions in it. That you turn the thing on, if you get, is that ready to work? Turn it on so we can hear it. 146, 475.
Well, doesn't go that high. Okay.
Right now it's transmitting at a watt. It will go up to 10. Actually, it only runs about 8. It's with the battery in there. But very distinctive. And I think at the end of the call sign it says raspberries, you know, like moo. And the first person to find it will go to the ID switch and click it once. All of a sudden the ID changes and everybody that's still out there looking, you can hear them saying, oh. But we've used this a lot. It's been hooked up to a 120 watt amplifier before too. And you may ask, well, how do you get close on something like this? There's a number of ways you can do that. With a handheld, battery's dead in this one, but rubber ducks do have directivity. Off the end of the duck is minimum sensitivity, so if you've got a signal, you can do one of these things, and where it's the weakest, it's in that direction. And if you go in that direction and it keeps getting weaker, well, you went the wrong way. You go back that way, 180 degrees from where you thought it was. So it's actually bi-directional, but it's a pretty good way to do it. When you get close, you can flip off 5 kcs, and that'll desense your radio just a little bit, and you get closer with it. 10 kcs, it may be a little too far off, but if you've got a dual band, you can go up to the 3rd harmonic. Because most of these transmitters, when you get close, will have some 3rd harmonic radiation. It's well below any engineering limits, but you can still, within 5 or 6 blocks, you do the same thing on UHF on the 3rd harmonic, which is in the 440, that'd be what, 420 to 440. Whatever 3 times the frequency is. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. Also, your body is a good attenuator. You get close, you can do one of these things, and where it gets weakest, it's that way. I came up years ago, and the battery in this one is probably dead too. It's a rechargeable mic head that hasn't been used for, well, it actually shows something. But with this, I went down to Sherwin-Williams, got an empty paint can. It was nice and silver when I got it. And I found out that the seam down here is just a crimp seal, and it would leak RF. So I drew a bead of solder all the way around that, all the way around this one. And shielding is quite important when you get close. You've got something that you can shield your radio with and have attenuators, well, that lets you get a lot closer. Well, I decided that with a radio like this, put it inside the can, and one little jack comes off the IF, 455 kilohertz. And I built myself a little board in here that takes that IF signal, and another one for the speaker, which came with the radio. But you just shield your radio this way. If I can get that on there. And I found that after I got it all together like that, I could get within 10 feet of a 10-watt transmitter, and it just barely moved the needle with no antenna. I also built a couple of attenuators in the lid here, 40 to 50 dB, and with that chip I'm using for the IF, I've got 90 dBs of range on that meter. That's a whole bunch. Your average radio, S meter on your radio is 20, maybe 30 if you're lucky. And I've got a sensitivity switch. You push it in, you've got minimum sensitivity, and that gives you full scale at about 30 dBs if you get close and need to get a real fine reading. But I found an awful lot of stuff with this thing. It has really done the job. From 0 to 90 dBs above the noise floor, you can kick in another 40 and 50, and with that, you can just take the cap off the antenna connector, and you can still hear stuff, a 100-watt amplifier within a block. You put the cap back on, you have to get within about 10 feet.
And John,
100-watt transmitter.
what's the frequency of Rabbit?
146, 475.
That's right. 475.
It's on simplex, but we have found all kinds of stuff around town over the years, myself and other people. Have you found anything?
Only with you, with
Oh.
finding the power poles with the arcing insulators and the ice melt heater on the radio tower and a few
Yeah.
other things.
But all kinds of things you can do with this. I think the toughest one to get solved was Western Electric at the time. This was back, when, 70s, I think.
Oh, I don't remember. Yeah, it must have been.
But they had brought in some industrial heating equipment from Baltimore, I think. And what they were a single triode oscillator, 3 kilowatts. And they used that on a little antenna to heat up some plastic or ceramic things that they were making out there, some kind of things for telephone circuits. And the little antenna they used to couple the signal into the work that they were doing happened to be 19 inches long. Guess where most of the radiation was on harmonics. The oscillator was running at about, I think, 13 megahertz. And they had harmonics all over the band. I think it was about that time I got my spectrum analyzer. I took that out there and did some looking at it. Not only was it on 2 meters, and it would just go up and down the band. It keyed up every repeater in town, including Fremont. And I don't think it got as far south as Nebraska City, but sitting in the parking lot outside that building, I had about 10,000 microvolts on my spectrum analyzer. That's a pretty healthy signal. And I contacted Western Electric, and I think it took us about 6 months before they finally did anything about it. The final straw, I think, was that I wrote to one of our senators, told them, gave them the whole story of what had gone on, and that Western Electric wasn't doing anything. This was after Western Electric told me that, well, we've done enough, we can't do any more. And that didn't sit too well. So I wrote to one of my senators. Shortly after that, I got a call from Western Electric, says, we are going to do a voluntary 2-week shutdown and shield this room.
Wow.
Because they wanted to do it voluntarily, because they didn't want the FCC to shut them down and have the FCC have to tell them when they could power back up. So that one was solved. That's probably the toughest one we ever had. So finding things other than hidden transmitters, we found a lot of hams and pseudo hams that shouldn't have been on the air, causing problems. Another one we found was I didn't go to work until about 2 in the afternoon, and one morning, you might know about this one. I got a call from Tom Thiessen, and he says, you know, I'm hearing one of the police frequencies on 9.4. I says, oh, really? So I gave Bill a call. He was pretty active in transmitter hunting at the time, and we spent most of the morning running around looking for a signal that was getting into 9.4. And I finally got clear out around Boys Town, and I got a little bit of a signal to the north. And Bill had to leave about that time. I says, well, that's okay, I got a fix on it now. Turned out to be in Fremont at a cell site. One of the operators, or one of the technicians on that cell site, had a crossband radio, and not only were we hearing cops on 9.4, cops were hearing 9.4 on cruisers south. Which took a PL tone to get into. 9.4 didn't, but Cruiser South did. So the guy knew what he was doing. Before we actually found him, I got a hold of one of the cops in Fremont and says, here's what we've got, would you go with us while we go and find out where this is? And he went with us just as a safety precaution. And I walked into the building out there where all the cell stuff was, and told them what we had found, and asked if anybody had a crossband repeater in their truck. One guy went scuttling out and all of a sudden quit. So I took names and addresses and headed back to Omaha. I got about halfway back, and Thiessen's on the radio. He says, well, what's his name down at 9/11?
Schmidt?
No. He's still there. Can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Connery.
Not Bruckner.
Connery?
Connery. Mark Connery. Tom says, Mark Connery's going nuts because he's hearing ham calls on Cruiser South. And I says, we've got it. And that was one we made the lead story on 6 o'clock news on Channel 6 that night. And the word got out that, yes, we can find people who are causing problems. So other than just having fun on the weekend, there's a lot of other neat things you can do with this thing, and doesn't take much to do it. Like I say, just a handheld, a rubber duck, you can find transmitters. And if the signal gets too strong, take the rubber duck off. And if you can still hear it on your handheld, hold it next to your body. You've got a directional like that. It's off your backside.
Some of us have more shielding than others.
Yeah. You and I probably have more than a lot of people.
If you can tune into the third harmonic, you can also do that.
You can also do the third harmonic if you got a dual bander.
Mhm.
Yep. Any
That is
questions?
439, 425, by the way.
Okay.
Third harmonic for that.
Okay. Most dual banders now will do that easily.
We could try that if you wanted to turn it on. Anybody with a dual bander handy?
Sure.
439,425. And that's the signal. That's without the antenna. And if I go, can't hear it. I cannot hear it. But if you use a small wire, it's barely there.
Yep.
It's done.
Put the little wire in there, stand up, use your body as a directional thing.
It's pretty strong on the third harmonic, even
Is it?
the little bit of wire, yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't hear it putting my thumb on it though. I can't get it all. No. There's too much signal on the third harmonic.
Not enough body.
Well, without the antenna, how about if I kick it up to 10 watts? You hear that without the antenna?
Oh yeah. That's on the third harmonic. Barely. Let me see if I get close. Oh yeah, there it is.
Okay. Turn all the way around, see how.
No, let's see. Is it still on? Yep, it is.
It is.
If I get close, let's see. Oh, that's, there's the null. Yeah, so, yep.
Put it back on 1 watt. That's probably, battery won't last a
Oh, yeah.
whole lot on that. I'm not sure. Bill got the battery for me, and he said it was good. It seems to be. I don't know what kind of life it has.
We'll find out.
Yep.
I took a little different approach to transmitter hunting on 2 meters. This is a radio that I started out with. One of the features of this radio is that it has a mechanical S meter. And nowadays, mobile rigs typically have a display type dial where the S meter is shown on that dial. One of the advantages of this meter and this one is that it is considerably damped. And what happens is while you're traveling along, you'll get different reflections and stuff like that. And it'll make your digital S meter go all over the place. These won't do that. They react too slowly to indicate all of those differences in signal level. So it's actually a little easier with an old analog style to find something. Now, one of the other issues with these mobile radios is they are extremely sensitive. This is probably 0.6 of a microvolt sensitivity. It's not particularly sensitive in terms of nowadays, but it's overwhelmingly sensitive when you got somebody with a 10-watt transmitter sitting there. So one of the things that we used to do was build an attenuator. Now, some of these hunts that I went on initially, you would take a car to get to the vicinity of the transmitter, but the transmitter would not be in a car, it would be somewhere else. And so you have to get out of your vehicle and go find it. So this is what's called a Fox box. And what it is it's an attenuator. So I plug the antenna in here, this lead goes to the radio, so I can use the attenuator to reduce the signal strength on my radio, on my sensitive radio. And when that gets too strong, inside here is an old Radio Shack VHF monitor receiver. And it's not very sensitive. It has about 5 microvolt sensitivity. And so it works quite well for hearing nearby signals. Now, one of the problems with these radios is they cover about 35 megahertz. So off the tuning capacitor, I have an arm that is on a threaded rod, and you can turn the knob and change the tuning through the 2-meter band. A feature of this is that there's a little bit of AFC in this receiver, so you don't have to be exactly on frequency. Last night, I set this up to operate on 146.52. That's on 146.475. This hears it just fine. With with the bottom on it and no antenna, I get just a little bit of meter indication. When I put the antenna, the meter goes full scale, and then I have to use some attenuation on it. So it works pretty good. The other issue, of course, is when you get out in the woods and are tripping over logs and stepping into creeks and stuff like that, it's not so nice when your $100 handheld goes in with you. So the $20 Radio Shack radio is not nearly as much of a loss. If you look in the old handbook and want to do transmitter hunting, they show you something like this. This is real difficult to hunt with. This is just a loop with the shield broken at the top, and there's an air variable in here. It's really ugly to use.
HF.
The antenna that I use is this. It's a Cushcraft 4-element beam. It works terrific. And Pat has brought out his antenna, which he has used.
Yeah, I used this on a couple of hunts. I wasn't all that good. It works well, but the good equipment that you have isn't necessarily as valuable as the experience that John has, trust me.
Well, and that's a very important point. You have to know how your equipment works.
Right.
And, you know, we will have transmitter hunts. You need to get your equipment out before the hunt and try it out. You know, find the repeater.
Right.
Or get somebody to talk to you on 5.2 and find them.
Sure. And
learn how your antenna works,
not
learn
only
how
that,
your radio works.
learn how to use a map and know the direction, and also know, of course, obstructions that are around you, things that could reflect the signal. And when you're taking a reading, don't just take it in that spot. Move yourself around in different locations, because propagation, as I say, is a fine thing, and that'll help you a little bit. Try it here, and then maybe 100 feet over and try it again, just to get an idea.
You get downtown Omaha, and some of those big buildings down there will give you some reflections. You may be looking this way for the strongest signal. It's actually over there, because you're getting a reflection off the building.
Right.
So you gotta move around and take the best of
And
several.
if you're hunting in a particular area, like say Omaha, it's good to know the high spots, or good to know places in Omaha where there's a good spot where you can get a good direct signal from anywhere around. If you're down in a hole, if you're at 85th and Center, forget it. You're not going to hear anything down there. Some areas in town are just flooded with RF. The base of the building up on Leavenworth Street, the apartment building, that has like,
Tell them what tower now.
oh, it has a ton of antennas on it. Yeah.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
A lot of, most of the stuff, most of the pagers on 2 meters have kind of disappeared.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Most, what's left are run by the hospitals.
Well, this is an antenna I saw of a kid online. I thought, this is pretty cool. It was, you know, like his antenna there is good. Is good, but you can't throw it in the back seat so easily. This you can throw in the back seat, and you don't have to worry about the elements getting bent. And it works good. It's now I set it up with the pole coming out here. Really, what you need to do is it needs to be vertical, because you know most signals on 2 meters are vertical. But give yourself an extension to get it away from your body a ways, and it works good. It's
And something else you can do, if you get close enough and it gets too strong, go horizontal.
that's true.
You get some cross pole in there, that's about 20 dBs of attenuation.
That's true. That would work
Same
too.
direction.
It would work
So
too.
that's a
So yeah, it's
good way
easy.
to attenuate it.
Put a piece of tape over the end so I don't cut myself. But yeah, you can throw it in the back of the car and pull it out, and it works good. The center, these two of course are just parasitic elements, the reflector and the director, and then the coax feed. I've even used it for transmitting. It works pretty well. But yeah, it's with just a small loop as a match, and it works good.
Yeah, theoretically, vertical to horizontal polarization, the attenuation is infinite, but with there's enough stuff out there, but you get quite a bit of cross-pole just in reflections and things like that. So it amounts to about 20 dB difference, and that's significant.
If you wanted to look at the kit or the guide, just look up on Google, 2-meter tape measure beam, and you'll find it, it's out there. So it's a real popular page, it's been up, gosh, since the late 90s, and it's still going strong. A lot of web pages have been, sorry?
It's in the current CQ.
Is it? Oh, really? I didn't know
CQ
that.
or QST, one of them has in the current one, the latest one has that.
I've seen it used. You look at some of the 2-meter fox hunting video that we saw, and I saw at least a couple of them in there, people that were using them, so it's pretty nice.
Okay.
Now, there are a couple of other techniques for finding transmitters. Both of them use a comparison of the phase angle of the incoming signal with different antennas. There was a unit that you used to be able to buy that was completely external to your handheld, and it had 2 dipoles that were vertical, and basically there was a box in between them that had some switching diodes in it, and it would alternate between the antennas, and when the signals were both in phase, I think the tone generated by the phase difference went to 0. So you basically turned the antenna waiting for the sound to go away, and that's the direction the signal was in. The problem is you can't tell whether it's in front of you or behind you, but they're very directional, it works very well. A more sophisticated method is a thing called a Doppler scanner, which uses 8 antennas in a circle, typically on a vehicle, and that has another diode switching arrangement that switches among the 8 antennas, and the control unit for it has a display like a compass rose with a series of LEDs around it. And the circuitry in there decodes the phase differences between the different antennas and then lights up the LED that is in the direction that the signal's coming from. It's extremely effective. It's what the FCC used when they hunted for signals, and works very well. I think you can still buy a Doppler scan kit from Ramsey Electronics. They're a
They
little
call that a
expensive.
doppel scan.
Pardon?
They call that a doppel scan.
I think they do.
Yeah.
But I think it's over $100 for the kit. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it includes the antennas. I think you have to make
Don't
your
know.
own antennas.
Just have to probably go online and find it.
Yeah. So those are a couple of other things. You can find attenuator circuits in the handbook and other sources. They're easy to make. This takes 3 resistors. One of the things I was noticing, while it looks like this is pretty well shielded, while John had the transmitter on, I was watching this. As a matter of fact, why don't you turn it on and
This one?
show how this works? Yeah.
It's only 1 watt.
Okay, I can hear it with no antenna on it. And when I put the antenna on, I've got quite a signal here. The thing that I noticed as I put my fingers around the switches, the signal strength was changing. Anyways, I wonder, yeah, the signal's really pretty strong. I'm not being able to get a null off the end
Yeah, there's
of the,
enough walls in here that
Yeah.
you're probably getting some reflection.
too much in the way of reflections, but this is very handy to carry in one hand and the antenna in the other hand, and you can walk right up to a 10-watt transmitter with this and
Yep.
hear it. This has about 100 dB of attenuation in it, which is probably more than the case provides because of the big hole for the meter.
Right. Well, that's what I did on this one. I shielded the meter too, it's well bypassed inside.
Yeah.
So the only thing coming out there is 1 wire through a feed-through capacitor.
Mhm.
When I first built the thing, with that lid on there, like I say, with it just sitting like that, I could get within just a few feet of a 100-watt transmitter, barely hear it, barely hear it.
Yeah. So, who wants to go transmitter hunting?
I want to take a whole bunch of Boy Scouts transmitter hunting. When are we gonna go?
Well, what kind of bus have you got?
I
What kind of bus do you have?
have anything that you want to have. I can arrange for as many scouts as you can stand. I can arrange for 200 of them to be at a camporee, and all I need is some willing operators to come up, hide that rabbit, and then show some scouts how to use those directional antennas and go find it. Y'all willing to play?
Well,
Because in Boy Scouts, as a scoutmaster, I'm always looking for opportunities. I like the opportunity to blend technology into what we do, and the only way I can do that is by interfacing with clubs just like this and ham radio and stuff like that.
Well, I can see another opportunity here too. Give them a building project on building something to find transmitters
You
with.
bet you, absolutely. When I
Get that
was
done,
just
we can
looking
hide
at
it.
what Pat has here, I could bet you I could send out the plans for that and challenge the troops to actually build something for that. The downside is that not all of the troops would actually have a handheld transceiver that they could use. Apparently not many troops have ham radio operators in them. So there's some limitations in that regard, in that the troop may have no experience at all in radio or ham radio in general. So they would be at a disadvantage.
and there's an important
I've had-
aspect, there's an important aspect on our end of it too, in that we would want to be able to provide enough experienced people
Yep.
that you could work with small groups of scouts.
You bet.
Because if one guy's got 10 scouts, he's only going to have 6 who are watching, unfortunately, because it's going to be hard to keep a big group
That-
involved.
And that's
So-
where we would have to have that planning and interaction
Yep.
before the event. And I will be talking sometime down the road, possibly next year, to build up the expertise, the logistics and things like that. But I would love to do something like this from a Boy Scouting perspective.
And we have ham radio classes where you can send the scouts to ham radio class, get their license.
You betcha. For about 4 years now, I've had the privilege and opportunity to coordinate the Jamboree on the Air event. And Pat and Fred and others in here have helped me out immensely with the Jamboree on the Air event. And I'm looking forward to some help this fall for the Jamboree on the Air. The next offshoot from that is I hope that we can develop scouts into earning their merit, or not just their merit badge, but earning their ticket. And some, out of 200, you're going to have 12 that are truly interested in it. And some of the Boy Scout troops, I've heard, have had their scouts actually get their ticket. And we'd like to see more of that. From my perspective, I get kind of bored with, shooting arrows, shooting BBs, shooting guns. Okay, we've done the fundamentals. I'd like to get into something a little more comprehensive and, quite honestly, fun that I can enjoy as well as a scout. So that's how I see radio scouting, which is a big part of scouting as a whole. But it's kind of like here in the middle of the United States, there's a black hole of the radio scouting portion. Because for Jamboree on the Air, I have been the only registered station within Nebraska and most of Iowa. Whereas you get on each of the coasts, every 20 miles or 100 miles, there's registered stations. So there's a huge opportunity for us as radio operators to interface with Boy Scouts and to influence ham radio down the road. So let's get together and play with your toys up there sometime next year.
I'll have to charge my batteries.
Hey, let's get it.
Actually, the one in here on the meter itself is just a 9-volt battery. Alkaline cell will last several hunts.
Okay.
So,
But by the way, thank you for the opportunity to listen and, the effort that you put together this evening. Well received. I like it.
okay.
So, would we like to have a transmitter hunt?
We used to have them the Sunday following the meeting in mid-afternoon, about 3 o'clock. So,
But that wasn't when the baseball games were all on.
yeah, this weekend would probably not be a good one.
Or next weekend.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is some people are gonna have to put some equipment together, and I don't know what's involved in that. My email address is in the ham hum, my phone number is probably there. John's is too. If you want to get involved in this and want some help, give us a call or let us know, and we'll do what we can. This is a lot of fun.
Yep.
What about the Sunday after the next club meeting?
July 13th.
That probably works. Give people time to get stuff together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did have time to get into the ham home?
You can drill that hole in the roof so that you can put the antenna down through it.
Actually, I'll take the wife's car, it already has a big hole in the roof. Just gotta take the glass out, which the glass goes away.
I thought you had an accident with your shotgun again.
Actually, I started out hunting in the Chicago area in the 70s, and there was a transmitter hunt every Saturday night of the month. Different clubs would run hunts, and they were at night. They started at either 7 or 8 p.m., and that adds a whole new element to hunting, doing it in the dark, which is why the big meter comes in handy, so that you can see it. I mean, there were people that were pretty serious about it. I know 2 hams that did have vans that drilled a hole in the roof so they could mount their beam up there. One fellow used a little 4-element beam like this. The other fellow used a 7-element beam on his. Some of these guys were pretty serious about it. There were some very interesting hunts going on. One that I heard about, I didn't participate in, was held on a typical Saturday night. And one of the rules is you have to be able to hear the hidden transmitter at the starting point. And the starting point for a number of these were out by the airport, northwest of Chicago. And everybody had no trouble hearing the transmitter. And so the hunt started and everybody headed east. And when they got to Lake Michigan, the signal was still east. They had coerced a ham over in Michigan who had a big tower with 2-meter beams to be the hidden transmitter. And, one hunt that I did listen to on a Saturday night, they did a similar thing. They had a pair of 11-element beams on the top of a guy's van and a 160-watt amplifier. They were about 45 miles away from the starting point, and you know, people are driving for half an hour, and the signal is now so strong that they can't attenuate it anymore. And there were a lot of irritated people. I remember
you get
one,
somebody like him, and he took this rabbit. I don't think it was this
it was
model.
a different one. Yeah.
It was a different one, but he put a 50-ohm resistor on here, dummy load. You can hear it fine at the starting point. You get 6 blocks away, and it just disappeared.
It was hidden under a piece of metal sculpture around the corner of the UNO library from where the starting point was. And that was a very important lesson for a lot of people, because you will often get to a point where you can't hear the transmitter anymore. And when you can't hear the transmitter, go back to the place where you last heard it. And so that's one other thing that is handy is a kitchen timer, for instance, that you can start when the hunt starts so that you know when the next transmission is coming up. Because you may want to pull over to the side of the road or pull into a parking lot or something and get in a better position to move your antenna around. The last thing anybody wants to do is like what I did during a hunt and have a traffic accident. Because then the challenge is getting the antennas and equipment into the trunk before the police arrive. And then explaining to your wife why you need to have the fender fixed on the car.
So what were your rules, John, for your
Rules were basically it had to be within the city limits of Omaha and Council Bluffs. You had to be able to hear it from the starting point, and
Had to be
had to be
located
on
in
public access,
Right.
like parks or parking lots.
Right.
Parking lots technically are private property, but they're public access, so.
And it has to be stable.
Yeah.
Transmitter can't be moved during the hunt.
Right.
Right.
and the power output remains constant throughout the hunt.
Okay. Could
I
you
know
use-
once it was in the window at Valentino's up there. We had permission to
Oh,
put
yeah.
it in there.
Wasn't this a cooler at a picnic one time, Tim?
Yeah, and it's been up in trees, it's been in dumpsters,
Been in the bushes in Memorial Park,
yep.
at
Been
20 below
underneath,
zero.
been underneath a wino and a park.
Yeah. I think I was out of town on that one, but I heard about it.
Good idea, John.
I was
That's
coming
what
out,
he's gonna stick with.
I was coming out of dirt cheap records down the old market. I had my bicycle with me. And I saw this car roll by with Joe, gosh, what was his call sign? I forget.
WRI back then, I think.
No, this was the guy that got hit by lightning a time ago.
Oh, Joel.
Joel, not Joel Peterson.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Any HR,
N0HFI.
HFI, that's
Oh, yeah.
right, HFI. Yeah, but anyway,
High
I
frequency
saw that
interference.
he was driving along with 4 other people in the car with a beam sticking out of the window, and I thought, I know what's going on. So I turned on the HT, I had it with me, and there was Rabbit, pretty strong, took the antenna off. Yeah, I can barely still hear it, try to get a location. I wasn't really part of the hunt though, because I didn't start at UNO. But I did find it, I think I was third.
Now, one time, there was a whole pit out in the middle of the field. And it was down at the bottom of the pit with a 5/8 wave sticking up out there. You couldn't see it unless you got right up next to it because it kind of blended in with the grass. Doug Howard almost drove over it with his truck.
Oh, wow. So is it every minute? It goes off every minute?
No, it's on for a minute, off for 4.
Okay,
It's on a 5-minute cycle.
okay, sure.
It probably still is if the capacitors haven't aged out, but it's approximately a minute on, 4 minutes off. 4 minutes gives you time to drive to another location where you can get it fixed.
One of the techniques that a town with creeks and interstates in provides is a lot of places that you can't get there from here. I remember one hunt in the Chicago area where a fellow hid next to the ship canal on the southwest side of Omaha. Actually, it was a strip of land that you could only reach by going about 3 miles up the expressway and actually going through a gate that was open to get to where he was. Otherwise, you had a body of water between you and him. There were lots of people looking at him, but nobody could touch him. So, all right,
So, Sunday after the next meeting?
there we go.
And that's July.
I should probably get out of here. I gotta get up early in the morning and run a farmer's market.
I see. Why don't you tell us about that, John?
Well, I just did. Benson Farmers Market, if anybody's interested.